What happens when a U.S. senator walks into a federal courtroom and dares to confront the judge? Not just any judge, but one known for wielding his gavel like a weapon, silencing truth and burying justice beneath layers of power. This isn't a courtroom drama. It's a collision course between truth and corruption, between a man with nothing to lose and a system with everything to hide. I'm about to take you inside one of the most explosive trials in modern American history, the kind where every silence screams and one misstep could bring an empire crashing down. Ready? Let's begin. Gray skies loomed over the U.S. District Court in Atlanta as light rain tapped rhythmically against the courthouse windows. Thunder rolled low in the distance, a slow, distant warning. Inside, Courtroom 4 sat in heavy silence. Reporters outside elbowed their way through the crowds, camera lights flickering like lightning as murmurs of an explosive trial echoed through the air. Reverend Calvin Brooks, a well-known black pastor, was facing charges of financial fraud through the Civic Liberty Initiative, a charity he'd spent decades building. The tension inside was palpable. Then, the doors slammed open. Judge Leonard Grayson entered with the chill of a storm behind him. His robes fluttered slightly with each calculated step. Silver-haired and sharp-eyed, he wore the authority of the bench like armor. Yet behind the mask of composure was something far darker: fury, disdain, and the arrogance of a man who believed the court was his personal kingdom. His gaze sliced across the room before landing on his young clerk. "Ashley," he growled, "no coffee. I said no damn coffee in this courtroom." Ashley Monroe froze mid-step, her hands trembling as she clutched a legal pad to her chest. She gave a small, apologetic nod and backed away, eyes lowered. Years under Grayson's command had taught her that silence was survival. With a loud bang of his gavel, Grayson took his throne. "If the defense team isn't here in 2 minutes, I'll hold them in contempt." The tick of the courtroom clock suddenly grew louder than the thunder outside. Jurors exchanged uneasy glances. Gallery observers whispered nervously. Everyone's eyes flicked to the double doors, waiting, dreading. Outside, reporters barked into microphones. "The trial of Reverend Brooks begins today, accused of funneling donations through CLI. But many say it's a witch hunt." Back inside, Brooks sat solemnly behind the defendant's table. He clutched his prayer beads. His eyes were weary, his breath shallow. In a whispered voiceover, his prayer floated through the silence. "If this is my day of trial, Lord, let me not walk alone." Then, the air shifted. A black SUV rolled up to the courthouse steps. Camera shutters fired like gunshots. Out stepped JD Vance, tall, stone-faced, in a charcoal suit that carried the weight of Washington. A former Marine turned senator, now walking into the most politically charged courtroom in the South, not as a lawmaker, but as a witness. "Why is a U.S. senator testifying?" someone asked. "This isn't justice, it's a political game," another whispered. Inside, Grayson's eyes narrowed, icy and eager. Vance entered. The courtroom seemed to freeze. In that suspended moment, one thing was clear. The storm had arrived, and JD Vance was walking straight into it. The courtroom doors creaked open. No music, just the steady sound of JD Vance's footsteps across polished wood, each one firm, unhurried. He didn't look left or right. He didn't need to. Grayson remained seated, face stony, hands folded. Not a nod, not a welcome. Then came the sneer. "This isn't Washington, Senator," Grayson said, his voice a cold blade. "Your title means nothing here." Gasps whispered through the gallery. A line had been drawn, and it was personal. From the defense table, young attorney Noah Reyes stood up. His voice wavered slightly, but resolve underpinned every word. "Your Honor, if I may, Reverend Brooks has led dozens of community projects through the CLI. We believe." Grayson's gavel came down like a hammer to glass. "Irrelevant. This is a court of law, not a church pulpit. Move on." Noah hesitated, stunned. Grayson's glare dared him to keep talking. He didn't. He sat, jaw clenched, defeated. In the gallery, murmurs stirred. The injustice was obvious. Vance sat silently, watching, not blinking. His eyes tracked every twitch, every vein bulging in Grayson's forehead. every sideways glance at the clerk's desk. He wasn't just observing, he was collecting ammunition. At the prosecutor's table, DA Marcus Ellington raised an eyebrow, a subtle shift. His gaze flicked between Grayson and Vance. He'd seen enough courtrooms to know something was off. Noah tried again, standing with more force. "Your Honor, Reverend Brooks has personally mentored over 300 children in Maconville." "Sit down," Grayson bellowed. "I will not be preached to." He was unraveling, and it was starting to show. Phones quietly clicked on in the gallery. Someone whispered, "He's losing it." JD Vance didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He simply raised an eyebrow, tilted his head, and offered the faintest nod, like a soldier spotting the first crack in the enemy's wall. His voice never broke the silence, but it thundered in thought. Truth doesn't need to shout. It waits for the right moment, then it roars. The camera pulled back, the ticking clock returned. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. The courtroom was quieter than it had ever been. You could hear the creak of the wooden benches as people leaned in, breaths held. JD Vance stood from the witness chair, his movements calm, almost reverent. "With the court's permission," he began, "I'd like to present detailed records of Civic Liberty Initiative's activities in March of this year." The word March landed like a shot. Judge Leonard Grayson, mid-scribble on his notepad, flinched. His head snapped up, his eyes narrowed into slits, and the corners of his mouth stiffened. The reaction was too sharp, too visceral, and everyone saw it. Vance unfastened a thick leather binder and laid a stack of documents before him. Grayson slammed his hand on the bench, his gavel rattling from the force. "That documentation is inadmissible," he barked, voice cracking at the edges. No one had objected. Attorney Noah Reyes started to rise, presumably to clarify its legal standing, but the judge's glare cut into him like glass. Reyes froze, sat back down, silenced. Whispers rippled through the gallery. No official objection, no motion, yet the judge had preemptively shut it down. Something wasn't adding up, and everyone in the room felt it. Grayson's tone shifted, bitter, personal. "You think your Senate seat gives you the right to grandstand in my courtroom? You're just another Trump pawn, parading around like a martyr." Vance's gaze didn't waver. He replied, not with defiance, but with a steady, low certainty. "I didn't come here to argue. I came here to tell the truth." A beat. Then another. 5 full seconds passed in total silence. The gallery felt like it was sitting on a fault line. Then, subtly, Vance flipped to the next page of evidence. Grayson's eyes darted just for a second, to the far right corner of his bench, where a gray file sat slightly apart from the rest. It wasn't on the docket. It wasn't logged. Vance noticed. He didn't say a word, but he saw it, and Grayson saw that he saw it. A flicker of sweat traced down the judge's temple. He reached for a handkerchief, patting his forehead as his hands trembled just slightly, like a king realizing the castle wall had cracked. Around the courtroom, people exchanged glances. Some nodded. Some exhaled for the first time in minutes. For the first time all day, there was something in the air that hadn't been there before. "Hope?" JD Vance's voice returned, firm and low. "What I'm about to present does not just concern the Civic Liberty Initiative. It concerns what's been happening behind the bench of this courtroom." He placed a new document before the court, a ledger of offshore transfers. Anonymous accounts, but dates that lined up precisely with Judge Grayson's rulings against conservative defendants. Grayson paled. Before the gallery could gasp, he shot up and roared, "Seize those documents!" But no one moved. Court officers stood frozen, eyes flickering between each other. None obeyed. Grayson scanned the room, wild-eyed. His voice cracked as he shouted again, "Do your job! That's an order!" Silence. It was as if the courtroom itself had turned its back on him. And then Ashley Monroe broke. The young clerk stood abruptly, her shoulders shaking, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He made me destroy records. He threatened to ruin my career if I didn't." Her voice broke. "I can't do this anymore." She collapsed onto the table, sobbing uncontrollably. Noah Reyes rushed to her side, stunned, guilt flooding his face. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders, helplessly whispering, "I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't know." The entire courtroom was still, not out of shock, out of heartbreak. But Vance wasn't finished. He produced a video still from security footage. Ashley at 2:03 a.m. shredding court documents under visible distress. Next, he revealed payment receipts from Liberty Advancement Council to shell accounts traced to Grayson. Then a list of prior cases. Thompson, Nguyen, Mitchell. Each dismissed or manipulated under eerily similar circumstances. As the evidence piled higher, Grayson didn't yell, didn't argue. His face was blank, hollow. His eyes were no longer on Vance. They drifted, unfocused, like a man watching his empire crumble beneath him, and realizing he built it on sand. The courtroom remained eerily quiet. The collapse didn't need fanfare. It spoke through proof. A woman in the gallery whispered, almost to herself, "So he's been doing this for years." Vance's gaze returned to the gray folder on Grayson's bench. Whatever was inside, it was next. JD Vance turned another page in the binder. His voice was calm, but every word struck like a hammer. Case of Wilson, case of Mitchell. Both show financial transfers from Liberty Advancement Council. Each one dated the same day Judge Grayson dismissed exculpatory evidence. A ripple went through the room. Grayson didn't blink. His lips tightened. He darted his tongue across the corner of his mouth, an unconscious tick of panic. His jaw worked as if chewing on fury. Eyes around the courtroom narrowed, turning toward him, not with respect, but with revulsion. Vance laid the page flat, like the final card in a winning hand. Grayson exploded. "You don't have that right," he roared, voice tearing through the courtroom like glass. "This is a smear job by the conservative machine. You think you can humiliate me like this?" He grabbed his gavel and hurled it toward Vance. It spun mid-air and crashed against the floor, splintering as it hit. Then the judge lunged. In slow motion, his hands clawed at the binder, eyes bloodshot, spittle flying from his lips as he snarled, "I am the law is me." And then the courtroom doors burst open. A dozen figures in black suits stormed in, led by Special Agent Laura Chen. She walked with purpose, cool and commanding. Her voice cut through the chaos. "This court is now under federal investigation. Leonard Grayson, step away from the bench and remain still." Time froze. You could hear the flutter of the American flag. Grayson backed away from the binder like it had burned him. You don't have authority here. I'm a federal judge." Agent Chen stepped forward. "We have the warrant, and more than enough evidence." Grayson's mask shattered. He thrashed like a man drowning. "I've defended justice for 20 years. You can't do this to me." But the courtroom was quiet, not because they were afraid, because it was over. In the defendant's box, Reverend Calvin Brooks bowed his head, eyes brimming. His hands came together. "Not because I've been saved," he whispered, "but because the truth has finally been heard." From the gallery, a black woman placed her hand over her chest. Someone finally stood up. She murmured through tears. JD Vance didn't move. He didn't smile. He simply stepped back, letting justice take the stage. And the villain fall from it. Leonard Grayson shuffled through the corridor, his wrists bound in cold steel. His robe hung off one shoulder like a discarded costume. Flashes from cameras lit up his sunken face. He didn't look at them. He couldn't. Inside the courtroom, the gavel he once wielded with terror now lay forgotten, rolling gently to a stop beneath the feet of Ashley Monroe. She stared down at it, then lifted her eyes with quiet resolve. Outside, federal officers shielded her as they escorted her to a private room. Ashley's eyes were red, but her spine was straight. She didn't hide anymore. Laura Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. No words, just a nod that said, "You did the right thing." Inside the investigation room, Ashley's breath caught. On the table sat the exact folder she'd once been forced to destroy, now restored, intact, and waiting for justice to examine. Grayson's voice echoed in her memory. "Keep your mouth shut, or your career is dead." then silence, broken only by the applause of the crowd outside. The courthouse steps were filled now, journalists, citizens, families. JD Vance stepped to the podium, the crowd settling into anticipation. He didn't grandstand. The law exists to protect the people, he said, not to be weaponized against them. It doesn't belong to a bench or a black robe. It belongs to those with the courage to stand when it matters. Applause thundered. Someone yelled, "JD for Justice Department." He smiled, just once, and bowed. Footage rolled across the nation. Crooked judges under investigation. Liberty Advancement Council offices sealed. Young lawyers filing appeals across red pins dotting Laura Chen's U.S. map. Every dot, a crack in the corrupted foundation. In Mockinville, Reverend Brooks was exonerated. The community held hands outside the Grace and Faith Center, banners held high, truth never kneels. Children laughed, families cried. The system was far from perfect, but today, it had bent back toward righteousness. And in that crowd, a little black girl broke away and tugged at Vance's sleeve. "You did it," she said, eyes wide. "I'm gonna be a lawyer too." Vance blinked, then grinned. "You'll be even better than me, kid." The camera pulled away. His smile faded into slow applause, cheers, restored hope. Then darkness. And in that quiet came Vance's voice. The law was never meant to be a weapon for the powerful. It was meant to shield the powerless. And as long as we still stand, justice will never fall. In the end, justice isn't just found in verdicts or verdict forms. It's found in the quiet courage to speak when it's easier to stay silent. It's in the moments when truth stands unshaken, even as power trembles. We're reminded that the law at its best isn't a fortress for the powerful, but a refuge for the vulnerable. And sometimes, all it takes to shake an empire is one voice refusing to be silenced. If this story stirred something in you, made you think, made you feel, made you hope, don't let it end here. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation alive. And if you believe that truth still matters in a world full of noise, hit that follow button, subscribe, and stay with us for more stories that dare to speak louder than fear. Thank you for watching.